Hi there, I'm Jeff Thomas. You know, fishing for snapper is something that everybody enjoys. But what makes it so interesting is not just the fish you catch, but the fish you hope to catch. There's always that anticipation of what you might catch next. Will it be a big old man snapper like this mounted 28-pounder here, or a trevally, or a big kingfish? Doesn't matter whether you're fishing from a boat, off the rocks, in a little tin boat, or a large launch. Everyone has their favorite type of fishing. I like it all, and I like to try new ideas and techniques. There are many very exciting new developments in the fishing world today. In this program, we're going to look at some of them, including jigging for snapper and other fish. This is becoming very popular and is very successful. It'll work anywhere and not just for snapper. We're going to look at stray lining for big snapper, how you can target the really big fish, and also fishing in the harbour. You don't need a big boat for successful snapper fishing. In fact, a small boat is often better because you can get in close to the rocks where the big fish live. We'll look at how to rig baits and what the best baits are, and we'll learn some of the secrets from the experts, and hopefully we'll make your fishing more productive and more enjoyable. Sold with the profits going to the Hauraki Golf Maritime Park Board. Snapper fishing in New Zealand has in the past suffered badly through overfishing by the commercial industry, but thanks to a new management policy adopted by MAF, the fishing is improving in most areas and the future looks promising. For the first time, recreational fishing will be given priority over commercial fishing, and the overall harvest has been cut in half to a total of 7,500 tonnes, which includes 2,000 tonnes taken by sport fishermen. MAF scientists estimate that the total snapper resource in New Zealand is about 55,000 tonnes. Snapper are like most animals and fish. When they get old, they abandon the herd or school, often living alone and staying in the same area unless they're disturbed. They will change their feeding habits, eating anything they can find, becoming scavengers of dead fish and offal. In fact, they are great opportunists and will eat anything they can catch, and this is a trait that fishermen can turn to their advantage. Big snapper are very wary. They didn't survive so long by being stupid, and fishermen who regularly catch the big fish know full well how easily they can be turned off a bait and scared away. They're equipped with incredibly strong jaws designed for crushing shellfish, and you should never put your finger in a snapper's mouth, as many people have learned the hard way.
That's the average weight one. No, there's been yeah, right. Yep. 5.985. 2.605.
2.605. Yeah?
Kingy.
5.625.
But before that, rather than have the prize giving drag on, the few things that I think that I'd like you to all be aware of. One of those good report is that the chopper pilot reports that he could see no rubbish around the boats, and that makes me real rad. Anyway, we've got an urgent announcement. Silver Cloud and Brino rafted together. You're dragging across the bay. You've weighed in 5,024 kilos. That's bloody good value, fellas. Good on you. $225 worth of impact drill. Good on you, mate. Graham, what's your secret of success to catch a fish that size? I mean, just luck?
I think guys will know how to fish with me.
Good on you, mate. Well, you've won yourself $495 worth of Moonraker TV aerial. Congratulations. The Sea-Tac workman there. Moonraker Australia Proprietary Limited. Don't forget his muscles. The heaviest snapper today was 11.48 kg. That's a big one. And they run a Bruno FM 2510 VHF, valued at $1,018. Oh my God. Heaviest snapper of the day. That is some fish. That's a granddaddy. Beauty.
One of the best times to go fishing is at dawn on a summer morning. You'll be surprised at the fish you'll catch from a small boat off the beach or up the harbour if you get up early when the tide is high. It's a lovely time of the day, and it's not a bad feeling to be going fishing while other people are going to work. I'm fishing with Bill Hoheffer, a name that's synonymous with snapper fishing.
I'm not going to sit at the business end of the hook. A lot of people who do the normal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times up the shaft and poke it through the end of the middle.
That's the old clinch knot.
The old half blood knot.
Blood knot, yeah.
You're blind, you can't find the little thing like that. You just slide it down. That's great. It's a good practical knot, but what tends to happen sometimes if you get a good fish on it is that it tends to slip. Come through the front of the eye of the hook, hold about an inch of the line down like that, then just wind that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times down the shaft, then poke the end through the opposite way to what you started, like so. And that's
right.
Simple, easy peasy.
That's a good knot, simple.
And that's what the long liners use, because they have to tie an awful lot of knots, and if you're doing the little half blood knot and you pull it tight, you tend to sort of get a little cut here and a cut here by pulling those knots tight, and when you're doing it 100,000 times a day, it starts to hurt a wee bit. So that's a very simple knot. There's nothing, you have to pull nothing, it just does itself. And it's 100%, there's nothing pressing, and it does
right.
the job. The other thing I do when I'm making up a trace is just a small sprat hook. Any sprat hook, doesn't matter what size it is, as long as the eye goes down the whatever the size of trace you're going to be using.
What sort of trace do you normally use for fishing like this in the harbour?
About 30 pounds,
yeah.
Even 25 pounds, because they're normally just catching the fish that we caught.
Right.
So that's the Hoheffer special. That little keeper hook probably catches more fish than this hook, because as you'll see when I put a bait up, it's in a very hidden little place, and you'll see when we catch some fish that it's this little hook that probably does most of the catching. It's quite a strong little hook. It's not going to come off, of course. It's just pressing down there, so it's got nowhere to go.
What's your favourite bait for fishing like this? Little boats in small water? Mullet, trevally?
Well, in the months from October through to December, the flavour of the month is usually mullet. And this is what this is. This is mullet soaked in bonito oil. And it just adds a little bit to the flavour, adds a bit more oil to it. And the mullet are relatively oily fish anyway, but because it's the mullet season, and predator fish eat the mullet, those little bits of mullet that are floating around and around sort of between this time of the year is why I use the mullet, and it's very effective. That little keeper hook, as you can see, I've just put in just into the top of the bait there. If I pull on that, the little keeper hook is keeping it up. If that little keeper hook wasn't there, what happens is the bait will sort of end up generally like so, just hanging off the end of the hook, and more of the fish pull at it like that. They've got all that to eat off, and they just go munch, 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 munch until there's nothing left, and you think, oh well, put another bait on, and you spend the whole day feeding fish. So by adding that little keeper hook, you've effectively improved your fishing 100% just by adding one little keeper hook into the top of the bait. Doesn't matter what bait it is, it'll keep it there. The other thing you can do if you're using soft baits is to take a little bit of cotton and wind it around the bait about 12 times or so, and what that does is just help keep that soft bait on your hook long enough for the that's not going to fall to bits as quickly as if it wasn't wrapped up with cotton.
You just wrap it, you don't tie it or anything,
No,
just
wrap
wrap
it
it.
around it.
Pilchards are becoming very popular now that they're being imported from Australia, and how do you like to use them, Bill?
I rigged this one up so it actually swims in the water, this first one, and it goes into the anal vent and just screws around like so and lays under the underside of the pilchard. And what that does is just help keep it right way up. And the second hook comes in, the second hook, keeper hook. You normally use 5-barrow or 6-barrow long shafted hooks, That goes down there like so, facing the fish. Simply comes up through the bottom of the fish's head, chin out through the top of his head, so the hook is actually swinging on its skull, like so. Now if I pull that tight, of course the whole thing's just going to screw up and not be all that effective. The secret with catching big snapper, of course, is to present the bait in the most natural manner, and this is what this is doing. It's also good if you haven't got a lure, and there's plenty of kingfish and things like that around on surface, you can actually use this as a lure, and it's very effective. Now all the weight's taken on that knot. Right, now he can swing on that on the shaft of that hook, on the bite of that hook, which gives it the swimming motion when it's in the current or when you cast it away from the boat and retrieve it. It's there doing its swimming thing. So it makes a great lure. You can tie it behind the boat at about 4 knots and he swims very nicely. And I'll just put him in the current we've got here and you'll actually see what I'm talking about. You can see him swimming. Yep. You get that lovely motion. And as I pull him, so he looks like he's in dire straits and in trouble. And when you're a fish, if you're not very well in the water, it doesn't take long before you're eaten. Now, in order to have this so you can actually cast it away from the boat, good 50 or 60 yards with a little nice bait cast rod or a rod. We come through once, twice from the same side, 3 times, and the reason why I've done it 3 times is so we actually end up with a hook on either side of the fish. So there we go, 3 times. Up into the fish's gill, just sits up there like that and then rolls out the fish's eyeball and you pull the whole exercise tight and that's the business end. Snapper will come along, wallop that end. Normally they go for gut cavities, so they wallop that end and it's the business end. This is the one that does the catching. Little half hitch, like so, over the tail, pull it tight and the keeper hook comes into play now. You can do this quite quickly after a bit of practice. About half an inch up from where we started, it slides in just under the skin, the hook just goes down under the skin, not right through, and then rolls out so it comes out of the hole where we started. Manipulate your little half hitch up so it locks up on the eye of the hook and the tail, pull the whole thing tight, and there it is, about as natural as you can get as presenting a pilchard or a sprat or a pike or something like that to a snapper. It's just an extension of your line. I always use these things floating unless it's in hellishing deep water or there's a big current. But that's easy peasy. And if you're catching snapper sort of 2 or 3 pound, 4 or 5 pound thereabouts, you normally catch one on this end and one on this end because they fight over these things and you normally end up catching 2 at a time just on one rig. Now the easy way to do this, if you're getting a lot of fish and they're biting like crazy, the easy way to put on a pilchard is just a simple matter of putting the hook into it once. It's a 60-40 in favour of the fish, but it does get your pilchard back in the water relatively quickly. And that's just one hook, no keepers. Put it through the head like we did before, like so, and just fire him back into the water. Normally the big snapper, if they're around, will just wallop the whole thing, swallow it down, and that'll catch them up near the lip. So to get it back in the water, but again, if you've got a chance, you've got all that to eat before it gets to the head, and so that 9 times out of 10 you get a big bite and it comes back like that. But it does get it back into the water relatively quickly, which is important when you've only got a short bite time or it's a bad day on the Maori calendar and you haven't got much time to catch a lot of fish. The other thing you can do with these things is they're very, very good burley, and you just sort of chew them up like so and just fire them into the water piece by piece, and all that lovely pilchard flavour goes into the water, and everybody decides it's pilchard's the flavour of the week, and of course you're telling the fish that that's the bait you're going to be using, and you're into them. The other thing you can do with a pilchard is if you're fishing in the estuaries in the harbour like I am at the moment, is to just take a fillet like so. They're nice and oily. Again, you've got your main 3-barrow hook, which is just a smaller hook. Ends once or twice. The little keeper hook comes down and ensures that it's presented to the snapper in the best way possible. Just anywhere in the top of the skin there. There it is, held up. Nice, oily bait, very soft. But if you're using a hand line or a very light tackle, 6-pound line or something like that, you can actually feel the fish tug, tug, tug. And as you'll probably see, we'll probably pick up a couple of good snapper on a bait like that, fishing in the harbour like we are. And into the water we go.
And this is your all-round basic cut bait, using a piece of pilchard, and you can use this either floating bait out the back of the boat as we are today, or when you're bottom fishing in deeper water, surf casting, fishing off the rocks. It's your best all-round bait, this little piece of pilchard.
Very nice smoked.
Scraps of fish thrown into the water will attract snapper to the area, and it's a good idea to use the same fish for this as you're using for bait. As Bill says, this helps convince the snapper that it's the flavour of the day.
Yeah, like Luton hen one, you can reel a fish, or dip, go on your finger.
Right.
Whereas you probably miss it off the end of the tip of your rod doing the same thing if you weren't looking at it. You miss it. One of these you can outcast a rod, some guys can, and proficient with casting things. But very basic, and it catches fish just as well as everything else.
That's
Probably more so.
And you're in more direct contact with the fish.
Yeah,
As you say, you can feel every little touch.
When I was long lining, that's one of the things I liked about long lining. Pulling in the lines and boom, 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 boom.
Oh, yeah, and there's always that anticipation
yeah.
of
What is it?
what's there, what's there.
I think that's why I like sea fishing better than I like trout fishing. It's unexpected. It's more of a surprise, I suppose. When you go trout fishing, you catch trout, and that's it. You go sea fishing, you don't know what you're going to get. See what I was saying about the little hook? Catches a little fish.
Yeah, if you're fishing with a little rod and reel, it's a good idea to hold the rod pointed at the line so that you're in direct contact with the line, just like a hand line. Keep feeding the line out. Get a nibble. There's one. Got him. Bill Hoheffer special. You better patent that one. Yes, I'm impressed. When a fish has swallowed the bait and is deeply hooked, you can free it through the gills, then poke the hook and bait back out through the mouth from the inside. You have to do this slowly so the hook doesn't catch on the way out again. Of course, this will kill the fish, and if you want to release it, just cut the line and leave the hook inside. Good one. That was a good strike. He didn't mess around.
Oh, he's a beauty too. Look at that one.
For this sort of fishing, you should use a running sinker so the fish can take the bait and pull the line out without any resistance from the weight.
They don't come much better than that so far as the eating department is concerned.
Perfect size.
The size that you like to eat. Very
Perfect
tasty.
size.
Love them.
Terry Beale and Mark Kitteridge are big snapper specialists, and we're fishing with them today to see how they target the big reds with floating baits. First, we'll look at some of their favourite knots and baits.
Right, so this will be a snood. Just go up through here. Go down with the other part. Down there. Now we have to hold that close to the shank of the hook. Get it around there. That's the one. Alright, keep going. Right, now we're going to slowly pull this up. What we do is usually put a bit of spit on it. just so that we can make it easier to pull up. Just very slowly, you don't want to burn that line. Keep pulling, nice and slow. And there we have it. Just go and trim that tag off with a knife. Okay, this makes a couple of really good baits down here. Put that down there. Just get it down the middle. Okay, we're actually going to go and sew this on. Put that down there. Just go and pull that hook right the way through. More. And then we want that hook to be sticking out.
You always want the point of the hook to be sticking out.
Yep, it must be exposed.
Belly flaps is one of the best parts of the skip. Long, thin bait like this works very well. Just put it through once. If it's very, very soft and been frozen for a long time, you might have to put it through a second time just to make sure it holds. That's all. The fish will chew on it from the end, and you give him plenty of line when he runs with it. He'll swallow it. Works very well. The bodies from the bonito make the best sort of burley you can use. It's very soft and nice and oily. I like to use the clamp-on type of burley bucket. It's very convenient to be able to take it off after you've been fishing. It's important to keep a steady stream of mixture going into the water, and you can add old pilchards, which are too soft for bait, and other natural food like kinners or sea eggs, mussels, shellfish, even crayfish bodies. The burley will attract bait fish, which you can catch with a sprat hook and tiny weight. And we soon had a good supply of piper and jack mackerel at the back of the boat. These both make first-class fresh baits for big snapper. Today we were also going to use fresh mullet, frozen bonito, as well as pilchards. But I was having a great time catching a little bait fish just on a small bait casting rod.
Yeah, nylon down through the eye, the shank of the hook.
Wind it round tightly.
Wind it round tightly. As
How many times?
Well, I prefer 7 or 8.
Yep.
Stop it here, hold it. Pass the other end of the nylon back through the hook, through the eye, and pull tight. And there's your completed knot. It's simple, very simple.
What do you call that?
Well, it's a long line knot.
Right. That's what the commercial
The
guys
commercial guys call it as a long line knot. The beauty with this knot is we can add a second hook, a third hook, or a fourth hook, simply by repeating the same procedure. Pass the hook down through the nylon down through the eye of the hook, and you can set these hooks apart. You can set them at right angles if you want to, or you can set them in line with one another.
We're going to gang hook this
We're
piper.
going to gang hook this piper, so we'll set it about that far apart. Back, down, around the shank again. The top hook, I usually only put 3 or 4 turns. I don't know why, but it seems to work well. Nylon back through the eye, bring it up, and there's our second hook and our completed trace.
Beautiful.
Now on this piper here, the first hook goes in through the eye. It's the hardest part of the fish. The second hook we can stick back in there like so, and then we have the fixed thing.
There he is.
You can set that hook as far apart as you like. Some prefer to bring it back down towards the tail.
It's going to curl them a bit.
Yeah.
Short. You
But
don't mind that?
I also find that a lot of the big fish come in and grab the guts.
Right, so you like one in the middle?
Yeah, in the middle. And on a longer fish, you could repeat this procedure and have 3 or even possibly 4 hooks on it.
Right.
And that's
So that's going to catch us a big snapper tonight.
I hope so.
One of the most simple ways of hooking a pilchard. It's mainly used when you're going to go and let the fish run with your bait. It's no good just striking right away because it relies on this actually being swallowed. All we do is go down through the top of the head, like that, just in front of the eye, straight down through the top of the head, out through the bottom, between the gills there, and that's it. Our flat rock special, we just go and, it's almost like holding the fish, we just go most of the way up, go to the other side, just go up here. We try to get to the gut so that we're exposing a lot of nice meat there, and then we just go and cut down, cut that tail off, chuck that away, or put it in your burley pot, even better. Get the hook, and once again you can either go down through the top of the head like we did with that pilchard, just one time down through the front of his nose, making sure that there's plenty of hook exposed, or we can just work through this here like we did before, just sewing through it. But I actually like it this way because it means that you've got two flaps just going like that when you're winding up, and in the current it looks really good too, you know.
One of Terry's favourite baits for big snapper is a cut mullet tail. He slices through the skin at about the anal fin, through to the backbone, and then down alongside the backbone to expose a fillet, and then crunches right down to cut it off.
Got a large half fillet of fish and then the whole tail. It's probably one of the best big snapper baits that you can get.
Okay.
We're fishing a reef that has all the ingredients needed for big snapper. It's close to deep water, and there's a natural gut or channel leading right into the reef between two outcrops of rock that are exposed at low tide. As the tide rises, the fish move in to feed on the mussels, sea eggs, and other food found in the kelp. The wind and tide should both be flowing in the same direction towards the rock, so that you're fishing over the back or the side of the boat in towards where the fish are. And it's important not to be too close to the fish or you'll scare them away. But you do have to cast right in close to the rocks. Mark was using 3 pilchards threaded onto his 8-burrow hook, and it certainly worked because he was into a fish almost straight away. You'll find these sort of conditions just about anywhere around the coast around New Zealand. Could be on a rocky headland or outcrop, or a reef just offshore. A good time to locate a good spot like this is at low tide when the reef's exposed, or even by diving. The things to look for are deep guts, channels or holes in the reef with plenty of kelp and natural food which will attract the fish.
He won't be a monster, but I mean he'll be all right. We've got colour, mate.
Yep.
It's a good red.
Good snapper.
Good red.
That's the only reason he fought hard. Oh, we'll eat him anyway, he's good size. Yeah, I'd get him.
A Phillips screwdriver through the brain kills the fish instantly. This is how the Japanese kill their fish, and it certainly improves the eating quality, particularly if you put the fish straight into a slurry of ice and seawater.
No, it's cowboy.
With this sort of fishing, you catch a lot of kahawai and occasionally a good kingfish. We usually release the kahawai unless we want to keep them for bait, because we catch all the snapper we want to eat. And while kahawai are pretty good to eat, they're not that good.
Yep, they can be a bit of a problem sometimes. Yeah, look at it again, eh? Really good size. I'll try and let this one go.
Terry and I were using TLD 15 reels and 30-pound line, while Mark had a bait runner spooled with 20-pound line. He was casting a little further and got closer to the rocks, and consequently got more hookups. But with the lighter line, he was also getting broken off by big fish getting into the rocks. trace material, we use heavy nylon, 80 pounds, even up to 100-pound breaking strain, with 7-bar-0 or 8-bar-0 mustard hooks. This sort of fishing is best at dawn or in the evening. It's always better with an overcast sky. You can forget about fishing in the middle of a bright, hot, calm day if you want to catch the big fish. Control of the line while you're fishing is very, very important. Terry continually winds in little bits, taking up the slack all the time so that he's in constant touch with the bait and can detect the gentle nibbling of a big fish. Because sometimes they'll come in and hit it hard, but usually it's just a slow drawing away. The fish must be allowed to take the line without feeling any resistance at all. If they do, they'll quite often drop the bait.
Wasted.
Lost, eh?
And the reef, yep.
So we let the fish run with the bait. They'll quite often stop, chew on it for a little while, and you wait. It's very tempting to strike, but you have to wait, keep waiting. And then when they move off again the second time, they're usually going a lot more strongly. And that's when you flick the reel into gear, point the rod directly at the fish, and strike. That's the fun part. Terry changes baits all the time. He likes to use fresh baits continually.
I'm trying to catch up with the bait. The bait's floating all over the bottom here. I'm getting a little touch.
Just a nice tight line on it.
Yeah.
I can feel it.
Yeah, I'm getting a touch now, but there's nothing. These big ones will just cruise in and pick it up and steam off with it. But we got a little picker there at the moment.
It's a good one. It's legal. Yep, and get bites too. Good. Yeah, here we go, here we go. He's still there, all right.
As the tide rose, the fish were moving into shallow water to feed, and the action was heating up. The best fishing is always in the last 2 hours before high tide.
Good talk. Come on, take it. I'm just waiting for. He's still there though. Yeah.
Still chewing on it.
Yeah. I just don't know how big he is. He's coming in quite quickly. Yeah, just keep him tight. You know, when you got that side wind, it's really hard, eh?
Yeah. That's right. You get that belly in the line.
Ooh, that's better. Yeah, this
Yeah,
could be
mate,
it.
you can see
Yeah.
the line going, mate.
Yeah. I think he's going to take it this time. Come on, baby.
We got a good one now, mate. Go! Yeah, we're into a good fish here.
No, I think I dropped it.
No, you want to. Keep it going.
Yep, I have, mate.
Have you?
Yep.
Over that rock.
I decided to try my favourite bait for big snapper, a bonito head split in half. It's tough and the small fish can't pick it off, and it leaks lots of lovely smelly blood and juices.
Hey! Yes! Yes! Might not know he's hooked you though.
And it worked again.
Oh! Just a little fella, eh?
That's the good thing about a bonito head bait. Only the big fish can fit it in their mouths. This fella would have gone around 12 or 13 pounds. Now, 10 years ago, if you'd said you were going snapper fishing with a metal lure like this, people would have laughed at you. Yet today, fishing with this sort of lure and light line is one of the most effective ways of catching fish and one of the most popular. It catches not only snapper, but a whole range of fish. And in this segment, we're going to show you how to do it with two of the experts, some of the best jig fishermen in New Zealand. There's a wide range of jigs available on the market, and these are the most popular. These are Japanese lures made by Yuzuri. We've got Letha lures made in New Zealand, designed by Eric, who's fishing with us today. Branks lures, also made in New Zealand, designed by Bruce Riley. And we've got Grim Reaper lures, also very popular. They come in a whole range of sizes, 25 grams right up to well over 200 for fishing in very deep water. Some of them got special features like this luminous material on the hook, which helps to attract fish. Others, like this lure, are made of softer material, which can be bent to improve the action. And a lot of them have extra weight at the hook end of the lure. And what this does is it prevents the hook from flipping over and catching your line while it's sinking. We use mustard hooks on all of our lures. They seem to be about the best that you can get. It's more important to have the right tackle for jig fishing than for just about any other type of fishing. I'm using a Bantam Speedmaster reel, which is spooled with 8-pound line. The rod is a Beastmaster graphite, 6.5 feet long. It's very light and strong, but also sensitive. To be successful, you have to be prepared to burn a lot of petrol. You have to be active and versatile in your fishing. I like it because it's a bit like hunting. And like hunting, it can be very exciting. We're fishing with Bruce Riley and his wife Judith. Bruce has been jigging for snapper in Auckland for 6 years now and is probably the first to take it up as a regular form of fishing. He and his partner Frank Perry manufacture jigs, and they go fishing every weekend and catch a lot of fish.
A jig, to be successful, needs two things. It needs to be heaviest at the bottom end so it sinks tail first and it doesn't turn over end for end. If you've got a lot of jigs that are evenly balanced, when it goes down, because that's like a little anchor, it turns over. And then when it gets to the bottom, it tangles around, and that's what happens. Right. And of course, you'll never catch a fish like that. So firstly, you need two things. You need your jig to be heaviest at the bottom end, and then it needs to have a bend in a figure S or Z shape. And what that particular jig does with light line is it wobbles both ways. It wobbles going down like that. When you pull it up, it wobbles, which means you've doubled your fishing. You're fishing on the way down and you're fishing on the way up. And later on, if we're lucky enough to hook a fish, you'll see that probably a third of the fish that I catch on a good day, please note I said on a good day, are actually before it even hits the bottom. Right? And that's where half the fun really comes in.
And that would be difficult to detect sometimes.
Without a light rod. Yep. And what happens is you'll find when it's going down, you've got to be very careful you don't have an overrun. That's why I like a pistol grip on here. You don't have to, but it helps. Yep. It's comfortable. Your thumb is just on the reel. And as it's free reeling, your thumb's there. But suddenly when a fish hits it, it starts going much faster. So all you have to do is put your thumb on you must let it have it. If you pull it out, it'll just swim away. If you let it take it, and then eventually it'll sort of slow down, and then you just tighten on the fish and then the hook is in the
I think this is the mistake a lot of people make with jigging is they think because they've got a lure, as soon as they feel a fish, they pull and strike. What you're saying is you actually let them run with it a little bit, as we do when we're straight lining. Right.
If you fish it just the same as you would if you had a live sprat on, because that's what they think they're hitting, is a sprat. But there is several techniques. I mean, if the fishing is very hard and there's lots of fish that you know on the bottom, you can put a treble hook on. Now the fish are inquisitive, and if that's sitting on the bottom like that, you lift it up, and it's got a treble hook, you'll foul hook the fish somewhere in the face. He's obviously swam over to have a look at it, and what happens, of course, when you lift it up, bingo, you've got a fish hooked in the head. Now, there are days if I'm using treble hooks, which is rarely now, but most jigs you buy have treble hooks, and a lot of the fish you catch, especially edible fish like snapper, are foul hooked, but like I tell everyone in the shop, they taste exactly the same if they're hooked in the chin as they do if they're hooked in the other way. And of course, it's quite a gig with a lot of people. But I find that personally, I get more fun if I can actually let the fish hit the lure. And once it's not hard, it's just a little bit of a knack.
Let's see if we can catch one.
Once you've clicked, it's quite easy, really.
You throw the jig in front of the boat simply because the boat's drifting forwards and you want it to finish up directly underneath the boat. And the boat's got to be drifting along, and you don't want the jig going up and down on the same spot on the bottom, which is why you're drifting, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the reason.
You want it to be hopping along the bottom, like a
What it
wounded fish.
represents is a dying or wounded sprat on the bottom. When the carwai are running thick out here in the Gulf, if you ever fish underneath the big schools of carwai, that's where the big snapper are. And they're picking up all the big dying, wounded sprat or whitebaits when they're feeding on whitebait. I've caught snapper absolutely bulging full up with whitebait like carwai are.
So the things you look for are one, birds, activity, schools of fish, and you fish underneath them. But of course, when that happens, you catch a lot of carwai too, don't you?
Well, the idea with that is what we do is we lower our jigs very slowly so you don't hook the carwai if you're targeting snapper.
Right.
But it is very difficult sometimes with trevally because they'll pick it up going slow.
So you really want the jig going along the bottom as fast as you can.
Fast as you can.
Yep. And once it drifts out behind the boat, too much of an angle, you wind in and cast again.
And if you get to the point where you can't handle that, that's when you go to a heavier jig.
Right.
And the idea is to use the lightest one you can get to do it. As I say, once you get more than 60, 80 feet and you're going fast, you might have to go to an 80 or 100 gram jig.
Right.
But where a lot of people make a mistake is they jig very hard and vigorously right up in the air like this two-handed. All they do is tire themselves. They catch fish, but they would catch a lot more if they used a smaller jig and just took it easier.
Very delicate. And sometimes the fish hit it, they just whack it very hard, and other times it's just a very delicate little tick, 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 tick. And that's when you let them have it. You let them run with it and take it.
What they've been doing recently, there hasn't been a lot of snapper. If you get big schools of snapper, they get very aggressive. And then it's a race to hit the jig. All you have to do is put it down, somebody will eat it. No problem. But when they're a bit thinner, you do have to fish for them a bit.
Right.
And that's personally what I like, is when you're fishing for that particular...
More of a challenge, like trout fishing.
Yeah, very similar.
So the key to it is a light line, as light a line as you can get away with. Because you want as little
there is
resistance
one
as
thing I did
possible.
say too. The other thing, of course, is the lightest jig that you can use for the depth of water you're fishing. If you're in 100 feet of water, you can fish up to 100 feet with that particular jig. Depends on the wind or the current.
That's about 60 grams.
That's somewhere around 60 grams. But once you get heavier than deeper water and more current or more wind, you go from 80 to 120, maybe 150. But normally in the Gulf area where we are, with this sort of depth of water, 60 to 80 is more than adequate. But if you've got a heavy, heavy line, then you've got to go to a heavy
Let's see if
jig.
we can catch one.
This is one of the golden rules of jigging for snapper, is to use as light a jig as you need to get to the bottom with proportionately light line. So a 60 or 80 gram jig, you could use 8 or 10 or 12 pound line, and heavier line for a heavier jig. Secondly, the wind and tide must be running together. They must be going in the same direction so the boat keeps moving. Frank Perry in our other boat here gives a good demonstration of how to play a fish on a light rod and line, a smooth, gentle action. This one's a nice trevally.
But ideal live bait.
Good bait for kingfish. Beautiful bait for kingfish. Well, we just went over a school of fish on the Sounder and you caught a mackerel, so they were obviously a big school of mackerel. But you do catch a lot of different fish jigging, don't you, Bruce? That's one of the interesting parts of it.
I've caught everything in the Gulf except the flounder. I actually brought out some different fishing people who write articles in newspapers, and I don't know if I can mention names. I brought out Sam Mossman, and the first fish he caught was 6 different species.
6 different species
One
in
after
one
the other.
trip.
One after the other. You got a carwai, snapper, trevally, gurnard. I can't remember what else. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fish, all different.
And when you're fishing, jigging, you keep it in free spool all the time, don't you? Thumb it, and after each jig, movement, you let out a little bit of line. You've got to keep that jig on the bottom, haven't you?
It has to bounce off the
So
bottom.
it's getting further away from the boat all the time, and you're just letting out a little bit each time, then you wind it, and you're always working at it,
Yeah.
always working.
If you don't keep touching the bottom, you'll only get a very, very small number of fish. What I do is I'll vary my technique. I'll give it a bit of a twitch, you know, and sometimes I'll give it a good lift off the bottom, and then let it settle down, usually before I wind it in. But it's one of...
There we are.
You've got to fish for them. See, that was winding in.
Yeah.
Now, he'd obviously been interested. That's not a bad fish.
Might have been following it.
Yeah.
Looks like a good one.
It's just sitting there. Doesn't know it's hooked yet. This is one of the advantages of the light rod, because if it's only hooked in the lip, it's like fly fishing for trout. You've just got to take it easy.
That's a good fish.
Good fish is heading out to sea. Big snapper. Well, when I say big, big for this sort of gear.
Good fish.
He'll go soon, probably. Well, I say big, it's big for this sort of gear here.
What do you normally catch when you come out?
Well, we
15,
predominantly
20.
catch snapper, but in numbers, more than you can eat. And you've got to remember the limit's only 30.
And you usually get close to the limit.
I usually get closer, but of course we throw them back. I mean, what I do is fish with barbless hooks. Once I've got a feed that all I need, I fish with barbless. I fish for fun. I like fishing.
Have you ever been skunked?
Oh, yeah.
You always caught something.
Oh, yeah, we've always caught something.
You've never come out, gone
It's the
home
most
empty-handed.
successful way of fishing, short of dynamite, that I've ever tried. It's gone. It's gone. Oh, no, it's not. It's coming up. One of the things you've got to do, or you don't have to do, but I suggest you do, is keep that jig moving all the time. What I do is after the jig has hit the bottom, give it a few twitches. If it's dead and there's nothing happening, wind it flat out, up 10, 20 feet, give it a bit of a jig, stop, and you quite often hit a big fish there. They'll chase it up. It's not going fast enough on the bottom for them to chase it, and it's obviously artificial and they don't want to know. When you wind in, they'll chase it, and when it stops, they'll pick it up.
Then you let it back down again.
And then just let it back down like I'm doing now. But keep that jig moving. And if
Always working at it, always doing something.
and until you find what's working, today they might just take it picking up on the bottom like that, tomorrow jigging hard. You've got to find out.
And vary it.
And vary it. Once you've hooked a fish, repeat what you've just done and you're bound to get another one. But you must keep that jig moving. That's why you want wind and tide together, otherwise the jig is just bouncing in the same place. It obviously looks dead. The snapper must die laughing, looking at it. Just bouncing in the same place.
Right.
Keep it moving. That's the other reason to use a light jig. It flutters better. It's moving better than a big heavy one. A big heavy one is a bomb just going up and down.
Right.
If you could see it, which you can't because it's on the bottom, you would catch more fish because...
Yeah, you could see what you're doing. But it's a bit like trout fishing, where you're always working at it, always thinking of how you can vary it. And when the technique works on one day, you just keep repeating it. Another day, it might be a little bit different.
But usually you can't have the jig going too fast so long as it's not leaping off the bottom. If it's going fast along the bottom rather than up and down.
So you want to be moving along the bottom this way, always moving forward, but going up and down on the bottom. So hitting the sand every now and then. And you've got to keep it near the bottom. Well, there's obviously a lot to it. It's very involved and it's very delicate. But it's got to be the most effective, deadly form of fishing that people have come up with.
Well, this is for me.
Once you master the technique.
But good gear is a big help.
You've obviously got to have the right equipment. The old style, the old-fashioned, very heavy boat rod with a big, solid, real heavy line just won't work.
One of the things too, of course, I said before, is a free-running reel. This is a Shimano Bantam Mag, which is a very good quality reel. Very free-running, as you can see as it's going down. Very good smooth drag, a powerful reel for its size. I've landed some very big kingfish on this reel jigging, and it's handled them absolutely superb. That was another thing I meant to say too with the reel. With a click in like that and a handle to put it into gear rather than the lever type, because if you're free spooling and a fish hits, it's very quick just to hit it. And you can
Right.
hook them
So
just
you
at the
prefer this where you can just click it into free spool, hit the handle to pop it out, rather than the drag which you're
on the lever.
working backwards and forwards. Yeah. I like that style of reel. I agree.
But this is a good drag too, very smooth drag on Shimano reel. most of the fish are in the bottom here along the side.
What you do is you look for a reef or a depression or a hole in the bottom, and normally where do you find them in relation to a reef?
Usually right at the bottom in the little hole.
Down the current,
Down the side there.
bottom current side of a reef, just on the edge of it.
Bruce spends a lot of time moving, always looking for fish on the depth sounder. And he finds them over shellfish beds, in holes, near reefs. And of course, like all other types of fishing, you develop your favourite posies. The difference here is that when you're fishing, you drift through a spot, anything from 50 yards to 200 yards, and then drive up and repeat it again.
That's fish. Every time we hear
the
alarm, that means more fish. You spend a lot of time driving when you're jigging, don't you? You spend all day looking for fish, moving,
on reef hunting you do. I like this type of fishing because there's a little bit of hunting in it as well. You're not just sort of blindly drifting around the ocean. There's some fish at the end of the drop-off. Just in here, just coming in at the bottom of the reef, that's a school of snapper right there.
Amazing how small a fish will eat a big lure.
That's one of the things I like about jigging, is the fact that you don't catch a lot of small fish. Put the lid on now to keep the sun, keep the nice and fresh. Have to go to road.
Here we go. Here we go.
Nice decent snap, but not very big. Nice fat snapper. Nice box full.
Nice box.
That's enough for us to eat. It's time we went home.
Eric Moorman has a slightly different style. He usually fishes in water that's a little deeper, around 100 feet or more, and so uses slightly heavier jigs, 80 to 100 grams, fished on 15-pound line. Of course, with a heavier jig, a little more energy is needed to work the jig.
You're really teasing them, aren't you? Teasing the fish. Trying to entice them into eating it. Sometimes it's a very gentle movement, sometimes quite a solid jerk. So you get a lot of movement into that lure. You just keep letting the line run out as the boat drifts away. The thing is to keep a fairly tight line between you and the jig, isn't it, so you can feel anything.
Yeah. If you let out too much line, you can flick it back with your thumb.
That's right.
Making sure that the line pulls up when the rod is down.
And I've seen other people jigging, I've seen you also, you give it quite a good jig and then just a little tweak at the end, at the top.
Right.
That's just to take up the slack.
Yeah. That,
like a double movement.
yeah. But now we've
You got a fish?
into a fish. Just taking on the weight.
You should always use the rod to kill a fish when you're playing it, not the reel. So you only wind the reel on the downstroke to regain the line that's been pulled in.
Soon, Eric. The tide's been running for just over an hour. According to the Krieger watch, the tide has turned an hour and 10 minutes ago.
Like a depth sounder, the tide watch is a great help for this type of fishing. You can tell at a glance exactly what stage the tide is at any time of the day. When we're jigging like this, we tie the jig directly to the fishing line. We don't use a trace or swivel, as they affect the action of the lure. So it's a good idea to retie the knot after catching a couple of fish. Look at that. Beautiful.
Nice one.
Beautiful fish. Beautiful eating.
Yeah, nice big sling.
Best eating fish you can get. Grunting.
Thumbprint of God on the
Look at that mouth. Mouth telescopes out. Look. They swallow whole fish. Look at that. Whoa. And they like jigs too.
Keep up with the fishing scene every month with Fishing News, New Zealand's leading fishing publication. Packed with articles on the latest tackle and techniques, new products, travel, clubs and contests, boats and baits. It's all in New Zealand Fishing News. New Zealand fly fisher free with every issue. 100,000 people read Fishing News. Join them. Get your copy now.
Our last snapper trip is really travelling first class. Fishing friend Richard Wall and I decided to try fishing off a private island, 30 minutes by helicopter from downtown Auckland. We'd heard that the fishing was pretty good, so we wanted to go and see it for ourselves. I'm using a graphite surf rod, which is ideal for casting a large floating bait with no sinker, and a bait runner reel, which makes this sort of fishing a real pleasure. You can fish it in free spool, so the snapper can run with the bait, which is very important. And it takes just a flick of the lever or a touch of the handle to engage the drag. If you're using small baits, this sort of fishing, you'll be plagued by moray eels. We caught a whole bunch of them, and when we left behind a rock pool full of them, which we knew would be rescued by the tide. But this wasn't another eel that Richard had on. It looked like the first good snapper of the day.
Nice one, mate.
Great stuff.
Make a sail.
There he goes. All right. There he comes. The ride out here is a great thrill, but the fishing proved even better than we'd expected. It shows just how good it can be when it's not easily accessible. We're too far offshore for small boats, and big launches can't get in close to the rocks where the big fish are, so the water hardly ever gets fished. was almost time to leave. The tide was rising and the occasional big wave threatened to dump itself on us and our gear. We wanted one last crack to try and get a really big fish. Richard thought he had it, but was hung up in the rocks. When you get caught in the rocks or the kelp, don't pull on the rod. Hold the reel tightly and pull the rod in a straight line. Point it directly at the water. 9 times out of 10 you'll break it off. At least you won't damage the rod or reel.
Don't let it pull you in. Ho, 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 ho. Well.
Richard had a good fish. We thought it was the big one to round off the great morning's fishing. But it was just a small one, around 15 or 16 pounds.
That's a 15, 16 pounder.
So I decided to get up my old favourite weapon.
Juicy and bloody with all that blood and gills, that'll attract a big fish. Put it through the eye once, thread it right through, come back, like that.
The old bonito head didn't let me down. It was in the water for 2 minutes and a fish had it. And it was the deep, throbbing pull of a really big snapper.
A big fish. Big fish. Big fish. Another snapper following him, look. Yeah, after we get this one, he might go faster. Grab that line there and bait on, plug it in. Yeah, that other snapper's following him. There's another one. Oh, he's going away. Under the gills with the camera. The best place is to slip it in his gills where you put your fingers when you're lifting him up. Might have to put one hand down there. Oh, you want me to do it? Let him run. We hooked that other one. Hold it up, Richard. That's close to 30 pounds. And we hooked the second one. Well done, we got them both. Giving him a little fresh water through his gills because he's been sitting on the rocks for a couple of minutes while we've been filming him, but
Beautiful fish. This fish is probably 40 or 50, maybe 60 years old. It's too nice to kill. For information on this fishing, call Helitrans at Auckland 453 009. After 3 hours of fishing, we had 13 good snapper, and we're back in Auckland in time for lunch. Richard and I could think of no better way to top off such a trip than a lunch of fresh snapper and a bottle of cold white wine. Absolutely beautiful.
Not bad. The only way to do it. Yeah. Helicopter here, straight back here, into the fish pond.
You know how occasionally you have a dream day, one of those days when everything goes right and you catch a boat full of fish. When that happens twice in a row, you start to think you know what you're doing and you can go out and do it again. So you invite some mates and you start giving away the fish in advance. And that's when nature pulls the rug out from under your feet and cuts you down to size. For every red letter day, you'll have some poor fishing days, but as everybody says, that's fishing. However, you always pay your dues. But there are a lot of things you can do to improve your chances of catching fish, to make your time on the water spent more effectively. You can learn from the experience of others, and that's what these videos are all about. I hope you've learned something from this video and enjoyed it at the same time. A good fisherman never stops learning. But if you'd like to see more on a certain method or type of fishing, please write and tell us. Or if you've got a favourite tip that works for you and you'd like to share it, write and tell us about that also. We might include it in our next video. In this one, we'll be looking at surf casting, kite fishing, rock fishing, deep water jigging, how to catch kingfish, how to cook fish, and much more. And we'll have a lot of tips from the experts. But I'd like to hear your tips also. So please write. Write to Jeff Thomas, Safari Productions, Box 18451, Glen Innes, Auckland. And meanwhile, good fishing. Hi, I'm Jeff Thomas. Now, the yellow-tailed kingfish is one of the toughest fish that swims, highly prized by sport fishermen and commanding a lot of respect. They will expose any weakness in your tackle, and when hooked, will head for rocks and underwater obstacles, wrap your line and break you off. Because of this, landing a really big kingfish is a very satisfying fishing experience. They're found throughout the South Pacific as far north as California, where they're called Pacific yellowtail. Here in New Zealand and Australia, we call them kings or kingies. What I like about kingies is you can find them around most of the North Island and a lot of the South Island. However, they are more common in the north, and the best fishing is from the Bay of Plenty north. In this video, we're going to look at the different methods of catching kingies and the tackle to use. We're also looking at a new technique of casting poppers on the surface. This is very exciting fishing and can lead to some really hot action. So join me and let's go fishing for kings.
This is the biggest kingfish ever caught on a rod and line in the world. It was caught by Dr. Mike Godfrey of Tauranga while fishing from his own boat off Mount Maunganui in 1984. Mike was fishing with 15 kilo or 30-pound tackle when he hooked a big king on a live kahawai. It weighed 52 kilos or 114.5 pounds, beating the previous record by nearly 4 pounds. In an incredible coincidence, another huge kingie was caught at White Island in 1987, weighing exactly 52 kilos. It equaled Mike's record to the ounce.
What's most important when you're heading out to sea in a boat, any boat, big boat, small boat, is to take the correct safety equipment. Too many people go out, get into trouble, and not only they cause a lot of other people trouble, but they sometimes don't come home. You need good life jackets. One for every person on the boat is absolutely essential. And you should also take a flare pack. These contain parachute flares, handheld flares, and if you do get into trouble, you'll be found a lot faster if you've got the correct flares on board. I like this new jacket, which is a combination of a flotation life jacket and a vest, because it keeps you very warm. When you're fishing in the winter, as we are today, that's a real bonus.
Our first trip is with two very experienced kingie fishermen, Steve Sneddon and Adam Clancy. Adam starts by demonstrating how he rigs the dead baits.
Hook it directly through the eyes, pull the whole hook through, including the eye, measure where the eye is going to stop on the skull against the point of the hook, and hook the bait once through that position, and then just pull the line back through, exposing the hook. See how that won't pull on the bait, so you've got a nice firm bait. Sink it just to make up for the current, so the bait sinks a little bit, looks naturally wafting down through the current.
Right, a whole piper.
When hooked through the head on a straight shanked hook, a whole piper can be cast, drifted or trolled, and it works very well and is one of the kingie's favourite baits.
Directly under the join of the gill rakers, push it up through the skull, making sure that it's pretty centralised. Pull the hook out, expose the barb again, and that's it. The way we fish those, we normally cast those out to the back of the boat and either slowly retrieve them just under the surface or skip them, similar to a popper action.
Yep. They really have to be moved all the time.
Yeah. Kingfish will take them drifting back in the burley.
Yeah.
But it just depends on their mood.
That's right.
Sometimes a little bit of action, pull it away from them once or twice and they'll pounce on it.
Baits cut from mackerel, kahawai or bonito also take kings and are floated down the burley trail.
Nice and shiny. All right, with this rig, I'll just use a curved hook. Works a lot better. Hook it up by the top of the tail section. Again, pull the hook right through. And just place the hook so the point's going to stick out when you hook it back through. And just again lightly through the skin. Hook it back, concealing the hook, put the points out. Now you've got a cut bait for drifting for kingfish.
That's the size? Of course you might catch the odd snapper with that.
Oh, yeah, you
we're not going to complain about that.
No, you definitely do. But the big trick with a bait like this is to have it totally unweighted, and you've just got to keep feeding your line back down the current.
Absolutely, no
fish,
resistance.
No resistance. Have your reel and free spool, and the fish, if they take it, you know, they're just, when they're feeding on the burley, they'll come in and just take this hole. You give them a couple of seconds, let them turn, similar to a brown trout taking a dry fly, and then you strike.
Bang.
Burley is very important, and we are using prepared burley bombs and also bodies of skipjack or bonito after taking the fillets off for bait.
These fishermen couldn't resist showing us their nice snapper, which they'd caught just around the corner. You'll catch kingfish all year round, but the best months are from December through to May. Some fishermen prefer low tide and others when the tide's running, but here local knowledge is the key, as with all fishing. We're fishing off a headland on the edge of deep water with a strong current flowing past, just the sort of place you'll find kingfish. Adam kept the burley going through the bucket, which is a messy but very important job if you want to maximise your time spent on the water. However, our burley and floating baits attracted no takers. So after 2 hours, we decided to head back and try throwing piper baits around one of the market buoys in the harbour. There'd been a lot of small kings there lately, and we were expected to bring home some fish for dinner. Kingies love to hang around any structures in the water, and you cast the piper close to the buoy, let it sink for about 10 seconds, and then retrieve it slowly. Sometimes they take it while it's sinking, other times after you start moving it. But they were there today, and Adam's bait was quickly grabbed. On 15-kilo gear, it may seem a little heavy, but you've got to stop the fish and pull them away from the anchor chain. Also, you never know when a 50-pounder will appear.
Sweet ass!
No piper. Unlike snapper, kingies aren't scared by the boat, and in fact sometimes if you buzz the water up a bit with the motor, it gets them excited and they'll bite. Steve took the opportunity to drop his piper right under the buoy. And it worked. He had one on, and dinner was starting to look good. For this sort of fishing, we're using 15-kilo tackle with a 2-metre leader of 30-kilo nylon. The piper seemed to work better with the beak broken off, and they must be rigged on straight-shanked hooks.
Little king! Hey! Prince! Baby king!
Probably just drift with it. We're going to go away from it.
Yeah.
Turn the motors off.
On the buoy, going home now.
Turn the motors off.
Turn the motors off. We've eased them away from the buoy. We'll be right now out in the open.
Hey!
That's a little better. Well, this is the old favourite, probably the most popular kawai lure in New Zealand. Comes in a range of sizes, of course. This is a little one. You get them up to about 6 inches long, green and in white. As you can see, this is a pretty old rusty one, which we've been carrying around on the boat cleaning brush for years, and it's caught a lot of fish. And if we're catching kawai and want bait in quickly, pull them in a hurry, then of course we're going to use a very heavy line like this. But there are a lot of very good kawai lures on the market now. Little feather jigs like this, which often work better than spinners. Saltwater flies. When the kawai are feeding on small minnows, small bait fish, the size can be very, very important. Quite often you'll go out there and they just will ignore everything you throw at them. And that's where a fly comes into its own. In fact, one of my favourite kawai rigs is using a trout fly, a small grey ghost like this one, which is just a small silver bait fish. And when they're feeding on small white bait, which they quite often are, and you notice when you pull them into the side of the boat, they often regurgitate the fish. You'll see all these tiny little fish come spewing out. And if you're fishing with a big lure like this, and they're feeding on something very small like this, quite often you won't catch them on the regular lures.
This, of course, is difficult to cast. You can troll it, but if the fish are feeding in a school, the worst thing you can do is troll right through the school or even near it, because the boat will put the fish down. What we do, with a small lead ball above a sinker, a simple rig, and the fly below it, the lead gives you the weight to cast. You can throw it out, either let it sink and wind it in very slowly from down deep, or wind it in across the surface, and it'll certainly catch kahawai. On a small spinning rod like this, you can't have more fun than that. Another trout fly which we use is really just a nymph, and what it does is it represents the plankton or krill which the kahawai are often feeding on the surface. You'll see birds fluttering around, and the fish are in a densely packed school with their snouts sticking out of the water, and they're going along just sucking up these little tiny creatures, and you'll often get other fish with them, particularly trevally, and they won't look at anything else. So we use a small trout fly like this, pull off some of the hackle, fine it down, and that will work a treat when they're feeding on krill. Same with this sort of coloured fly. You could either cast it with a fly rod. If you really want to have some sport, use a trout fly rod, or put it underneath a ball sinker and use a spinning rod. Again, great sport, and you'll often catch fish when nobody else will.
Here we're casting flies to a school of kahawai which are feeding on krill on the surface. They will often ignore other lures in this situation, but you can catch fish all day on flies, either cast with a fly rod or by using the sinker and fly combination on a bait caster. Also, by drifting up to the school, you don't put them down as readily as you will when a boat trolls right through the school.
I got one.
Good job.
Kahawai on a trout rod are great sport in their own right.
Got it. Yeah. About the same size as Billy's one.
All right.
Yeah.
Very nice fish, Jeff.
Beautiful, aren't they? There's some new kahawai lures which are coming on the market, which are very, very effective. This is a new jig that will be available soon, and it's like a small metal lure for either jigging or casting. It can be trolled. You can troll it behind the boat, but again, when we're after kahawai, we prefer to drift up to the school, throw this out, let it sink and jig it underneath the school, or just wind it back across the surface. Another new lure, which we like to use, is this Canadian one. It was designed by a salmon fishing guide up there, and it's called the Lure. And with this revolving blade on the tail, of course, gives it that extra action, and it's dynamite on kahawai. Again, both jigged, cast, or trolled.
This is the sight that all fishermen love to see. Birds working over a school of fish. Steve, Adam and I are casting small jigs of 20 grams to catch bait for our live bait fishing for kingies. On the small Bantam Beastmaster and 4-kilo line, we had a ball catching the bait. There was a mixture of kahawai, slimy mackerel and yellowtail. We didn't bother keeping the yellowtail as they're nowhere near as good for kings as the slimies or kahawai.
Oh, slimy.
Too slimy. Look.
Guaranteed
Was he on the bottom or?
No.
Sometimes birds will become tangled in your line, and when untangling them, it's a good idea to wear gloves or wrap a cloth around your hand. Hold the bird tightly, as they've all got sharp beaks and claws which can inflict a nasty wound.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, the way you cast out one direction, they come up in another. Well, something grabbed that when it was sinking. Still there.
Behind us.
I'll get over there in a second as soon as I get rid of what's on the end of this rod.
The new jig we were testing worked well on everything, including a small snapper.
Huge. Big horse.
The live bait tank full, we headed off to find some kings.
Right, while I'm on the towel, that usually keeps them fairly quiet. So you notice I'm putting this hook in with that point going up as the hook's laying across its back, Jeff. The reason for that is the fish is swallowed head first by the king, and as the hook lays back, you want that point going up. Make sure there's no scales on the point. Just enough. It's just hooked deep enough to hold him.
Right.
And you know, when I strike, the hook will hopefully pull out of the fish, and I'll be into the king. There you go, little fella.
Straight under the boat. They always do that, don't they?
We're fishing over a reef, drifting live baits under a balloon on a 3-metre trace. The balloon is tied to the swivel with cotton, so it'll break off easily when a fish strikes.
Make a hitch around it, connect to the balloon, and just tie it to the top eye of the swivel.
Top eye.
Couple of granny knots there. Just going to grab a little blue mackerel here, slimy mackerel.
Adam hooked up a small slimy mackerel, which is his favourite bait for kingies.
So the point's facing up, away from the head, so when it's struck, it won't bite back into the bait fish. Hook him just lightly in front of the dorsal.
Now it's a question of waiting and waiting. You can feel the vibrations down the line as the bait struggles against the balloon, and it's a good idea to change the baits regularly, as a fresh one will send out stronger vibrations. Like all predators, the kings are attracted to a bait fish that is wounded or in trouble, and of course that's the message which our liveys are sending out. If the bait comes to the surface, it usually means there are kings around.
Sorry, he's on the surface. Flatten around. Oh, geez, do that and you'll be able to get eaten.
So Adam replaced his bait with a fresh one, and it did the trick. He was into a fish.
Yep, we're on, we're hooked up nicely.
Okay, here we go.
We had tied some floats to the anchor rope so it was ready for a quick release. Then we could lead the fish away from the reef and play it in the open water. You must get those kings away from the rocks.
Okay, we're ready.
If you want to release the king, try to gaff it in the mouth so you don't injure it badly. They're also easier to pull into the boat when they're lip gaffed.
Thanks, Jeff.
Nice one.
Just before How big's he? About 35 pounds, yep.
It was a nice king of about 17 kilos or 35 pounds, and Adam put it back to fight another day.
There's quite a range of trolling lures that you can use, aren't there, Steve? Which ones do you like the best, mate?
Personally, I like the big Rapalas, the CD18.
CD18.
Being one of the most consistent fish takers. But
These are both CD18s, just two different colours.
Yep.
And that's a smaller version of the same thing, isn't
It's
it?
a CD14.
And that's a little baby.
CD7.
Right. These are other Rapalas, which are jointed to give them more action, obviously.
When they're on Piper, when the kings are feeding on Piper, you can't go past the slivers.
That one?
Yeah.
Well, Piper is one of their favourite baits, isn't it?
That's right.
What about this one? That looks like a good one.
That's a Charlie White,
Uh-huh.
a Canadian salmon lure that have only just recently come into New Zealand.
That's our jawbreaker, isn't it? That's one of the toughest lures you can get. You just cannot destroy them.
Now they've got a 300-pound ball-bearing swivel on the belly hook.
Mighty mackerel mauler, a new one from Australia. And this is another good one, Halco laser, like the one on the packet here, same brand. That fire orange colour looks like a good one. It's amazing how fish will quite often go for such a bright fluorescent colour.
Yeah, well, you just got to find what colour they're on the day.
Yeah, just keep varying it if you're not catching them.
Yep.
A little sea ferret catches everything. Kahawai to small tuna.
Trolling is a good way to find fish, and you cover a lot of water. You should follow current lines and work the water around headlands, reefs and drop-offs. Adam had a Rapala, while Steve tried our new lure from Canada. It looked good in the water with the spinner revolving on the tail. Then I hooked up a live kahawai, pushing the 8-bar game hook through the jaws behind the lips. We were trying a new downrigger, a method which is popular in the United States, but still new to many people in this part of the world. It actually makes a lot of sense to present a lure or bait down deep, rather than just scraping the surface all the time. The lure is attached to the lead ball with a rubber band, which of course will snap when we get a strike. The reel is set in free spool, so the fish can swim away and take line with it while it swallows the bait. And then of course we put the reel in gear and strike.
Right.
Put our clip on.
Coast lock clip through. Right, that's good. Now, as soon as that gets hit, that'll break.
Yeah. Okay, we'll let it
put it down.
slowly.
We lowered the weight down about 5 meters and again settled down to weight.
Be handy if that's depth counter. Right, we'll set the drag on that reel fairly light so the fish can still move off.
That's right.
Once he pops that rubber band.
It's really like live baiting on the surface, except we're presenting the bait to him down deep.
Yeah.
And when it pops and he strikes, then you want to be able to run with it.
Away.
Okay. Now we wait. We always, when we're fishing lures like this, always watch the rod tip. Make sure there's plenty of vibration. That's the story, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because every lure works at a slightly different speed, same as trout fishing.
Oh, yeah.
And what we quite often do is just drag the lure in the water beside the boat and look at it and figure out what speed you get the best action at, and then you fish at that speed.
Usually if that stops vibrating, it means you've picked up a bit of weed or something. And, time to pull it and clear it and check it.
It's always something you've got to be looking at, watching, checking.
It's the difference between fishing lures and dragging lures around the ocean. Get it clearing?
Hey!
Bring the boat around a bit there, Jeff. Right, yeah, as soon as you got that up, mate.
Another one! Right here, I was just pulling it in when you got your strike, and he took it. Here we go, we'll hit him. Go! Fantastic! fantastic. Don't believe it. You've got to...
A rod bucket or gimbal belt is essential for this type of fishing. And when on a really big fish, a shoulder harness or kidney harness also helps.
I'll tell you what. Gone. Just...
My fish dived for the reef and broke me off. And Steve's one looked to be heading the same way.
What happened to my one? Right in the rock. On him, mate. I'll just see if I can hold him. Ah, no. It's gone. No, he hit the rock as well. Yeah.
After losing 2 good fish, we were proving again to ourselves just how tough these magnificent fish really are. Today we wanted to catch one on a surface popper. It's an exciting technique that is particularly effective on kingies.
Okay, Adam, this is a good example of a regular popper, isn't it? That's about the most common size and colour. And you can see the colour, obviously, got a blue back like pilchard, and it's white underneath, like a bait fish. Is that one of your favourites?
One of the more popular patterns, that's for sure. The styling would be the more popular styling with the slant face, so it just skips across the water like a escaping bait fish or a bait fish that's being chased.
Right. And the whole object is to have it, as you say, skipping across the water, and it gets the kingies excited, doesn't it?
That's right, they really get fired up.
Well, this one's my favourite. They're the ones that have been around the longest. The cotton cordell, they're an American one. And these particular ones with the red spot on them are weighted. You can, and they've got, I imagine it's a couple of little ball sinkers in there. And when you're retrieving them, you know, they're going along like that and bouncing. And those sinkers are rattling around, putting out the low frequency sound that they reckon attracts game fish. They certainly will work well on kingfish anyway.
Right. The noise of a popper going across the surface, the splash it makes on the water is probably one of those feeding signal type splashes. Because I've actually jumped in the water and listened to lures going over my head, and the noise transmission through the water is very, very high.
So right.
I'm not surprised that kingfish will come up and...
So even if they're not actively feeding at the time, it's enough to trigger the response. Yeah. That's a good-looking one,
sure is.
Adam.
It's the new lethal popper.
Lethal popper, is that made by the guys that make the lethal lures?
That's right, yep. Eric Moorman and co.
Yep.
They've been working on these ones for quite some time, and they're just due to put them out. They're particularly good for 2 reasons. One, they've got heavy-duty wires running through the whole length of the popper,
right?
Which is quite critical with popper fishing because there's a lot of stress put on your lure, and the heavy-duty split ring as well, because when you hook a good kingfish on a lure, especially a popper of that length, the leverage that can be exerted is normally on poorly made lures enough to straighten out or bend your split rings.
Right.
And they do take a real hammering.
Like with all kingfish fishing, everything you're using in your tackle has to be the best, isn't it? The strongest. You just can't have any weak points.
I don't think there's a better fish for finding any weakness in tackle.
Yeah, what are the best colours that you think best ones work with?
Well, the colours wouldn't be my most critical aspect, but if I had to choose 3 or 4 colours, I'd say this pearl with red or pink head, the blue and white baitfish imitation, and the straight pink. I'm a big fan of pink.
Yep.
For some reason that's particularly attractive to fish, don't ask me why.
What other styles of poppers do you like?
Well, we've got the chugger or blooper type of lure. You use these in a slightly different action. You basically dig your rod tip into the water when you're retrieving them, and it puts up a big spray of water, and it looks like maybe a larger baitfish trying to escape or an injured baitfish. The slower action sometimes actually has quite dramatic results because the fish just seem to slam them out of the water and just get right into them.
What rod do you use? Is this one of your favourite rods for throwing poppers?
Yep, this is an excellent rod for that sort of work. It's got a nice fine tip action, so it can really cast a lure a long way, and it's also extremely powerful in the butt area, which is critical when you're playing a large fish and you've got to really put the hurt onto him. You need a rod with that butt that really puts the pressure on.
You're using 15k line?
Through this one, yeah. The rod's designed for 10 to 15k line. For the close quarter type fishing that we're doing, it's make it or break it. and you never know. One fish could be £5, the next one could be £50, so you've got to be prepared to really rip into it.
So you're not going to use anything less than 15k for these kings?
Not in the situations we're fishing, you know, close to marker buoys, because those chains, they just wrap you up in no time flat.
That's right.
You lose a lot of lures.
What rod are you using, Steve?
Well,
you say you like the fast retrieve.
I'm a high-speed overhead freak.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah, I've always fished with overhead reels all my life. And, the Speedmaster 6-to-1, they're the ones you can really get a lure moving with.
You can really crank it up with that 6-to-1 retrieve.
Yeah.
And you've got a
line. It's basically the same action as the rod that Adam's using.
Yeah.
Fast taper, got a very powerful butt and a softish tip. And it's just a gears for casting these weighted cotton cordels.
Right.
You know, that's probably the only handicap with an overhead reel. You've got to have a little bit more weight, you know, on your lure.
Yeah.
Especially if you're casting into wind.
We headed for the marker buoys in the harbour and raised fish almost straight away. They'll follow the popper right to the boat, which is a sure way to get your heart started first thing in the morning.
Something was interesting. Got it? Yeah, boy. Yeah, you got one on, Steve? Yeah.
The rod is held high when retrieving and lowered as the lure reaches the boat, and you wind just about as fast as you can.
Okay. Here we go. Oh, no, he turned off. That's where we want it. Here we go. Yeah, you're still there. Look at him.
Right. He was following it all the way. Stay on the lure, mate. When he hits it, that's what we'll see that.
That's a good splash.
When Adam struck a fish, the line dug into itself on the spool, a lesson to not wind it in loosely. It wasn't Adam's fault, he was using my rod, which a friend had borrowed. The next morning when we arrived, there were birds working around the buoy. A sure sign of fish, we had to raise something here.
Follow up? Yes.
Little king.
Yes!
Big kahawai. No, little king. Little king. Beautiful. Took it right at the boat.
Got him.
Hey, love those poppers.
With so many treble hooks hanging off the lure, you could easily get one in your hand. So we use a pair of pliers to release the fish.
Yes, follow up too.
Adam tried a big chugger, and while we had several more follows, we didn't get any more strikes.
You're shifting the boat. Oh, yes. I think I'll bring it around the front, huh? Yes. There he goes, there he goes. Yes. Here he goes. Steve. Come on. Behind us. No, he's backed off.
Keep up with the fishing scene every month with Fishing News, New Zealand's leading fishing publication. Packed with articles on the latest tackle and techniques, new products, travel, clubs and contests, boats and baits. It's all in New Zealand Fishing News. New Zealand fly fisher free with every issue. 100,000 people read Fishing News. Join them. Get your copy now.
The not
knots you use when fishing for kingfish are very important. A knot is always a potential weak point in your whole system, so we use what's called a uni knot, which gives you more than 95% of the line strength is transferred to the knot. That's about as high as you will get with any knot. We use the same knot to tie on the swivels and the hooks and the lures. We use ball-bearing game swivels, which are the best you can get, and good quality nylon. I use Triton Tournament game line, and we change the line on our reels every year. Okay, now to do the uni knot, we start off, of course, threading the nylon through the hook, okay? Then bring it back with a fairly long tag end, okay? And then I put this finger over the tag end, just get it right here, and bring it back and actually form a loop over the doubled line. So you've got the two pieces of line and the loose bit coming over the top, okay? And then back through the loop with the tag end. Wrap it round once, twice, 3, 4. Gets a little messy there. You should do it at least 5 times, and it will look like that. Hang on, get our fingers out here. It'll look like that before pulling it up tight against the hook, okay? So we tighten it up like that. And then, of course, as with any knot, always moisten the nylon before you pull it tight so the friction doesn't damage it or cut it. Okay, and then we pull it tight up against the hook. Now, of course, holding a hook and pulling it is not always easy. It can dig into your hand. So what I like to do is use the pliers or something like that to put the hook around, pull it tight like this. Then when cutting off the tag end, I also, as an extra precaution to make sure it's really tight, just get the pliers and pull that tag end tight before cutting it off. And don't cut it too close to the knot. It doesn't hurt to have a little bit left over as a safety margin. There we are, the uni knot.
Now the 24-hour weather update for Greater Auckland. Rain gradually clearing this morning, but remaining rather cloudy.
What is the weather going to do? That's always the problem with fishing trips. But with this one, we weren't going out in a boat. We're going to fish off the rocks. It's a trip I'd been looking forward to for a long time. We were at Coromandel with New Zealand's top land-based game fisherman, Richard Baker. Graham Hunter and Richard Wall made up the crew, and we spent over an hour walking to one of Richard's hotspots. Richard likes to fish off a ledge close to deep water with a good current flowing past. You always need a current when you're fishing for kings. After that walk, I figured I'd earned a beer when we arrived.
Talk to TV.
Let him touch the sides.
And do it.
Break the pilchards up so they get nice and oily. Lets all the oil out of them and brings all the rest of the fish around.
First, Richard sets up a burley trail using pieces of pilchards. We use big pieces rather than mashing them up because the kings will come in and eat the pieces.
Just follow the burley up.
Creates, get a bit of attention.
Creates the activity.
Yep.
This is what brings the kingfish up. They can't see what's happening.
Richard soon had the first kawai bait ready to be hooked up and put back under a balloon. When landing the kawai, you should be careful not to let them flap around on the rocks and hurt themselves.
As you put the barb of the hook so that when a kingfish always swallows them head first, that barb of the hook's sticking up
That way,
and automatically goes into your kingfish. If you had it the other way, it'd do exactly the opposite and reverse back into your bait.
Right.
Let's get them in the water.
He keeps the kawai on a short line to wear it out a little so it won't break off the balloon. Then we leave it to swim around out in the water, sending out signals to those big kings.
You don't give them much chance to do any fighting.
A second carway will go into a rock pool for use later on.
Rock pool for them.
The next fish was a snapper.
Beautiful. Little fresh fish for dinner.
Then a small king arrived, scattering the mau-mau, which were enjoying a free lunch.
Let's have 'em.
He was too small for our bait, and we waited for a bigger one.
Kingy! Got that.
And he arrived.
There he is. Following it.
A nice fish of 50 pounds or more. We thought we had him, but he ignored our poor livey, which was trying to climb back out onto the rocks to get out of trouble. So I rigged a dead piper and cast it out. You never know when it will do the trick.
We're on! We are on! The old piper! I love those piper. He just popped the hook. I put a bigger hook on.
Another fish lost.
He didn't
It
have it
just
right
wasn't
down.
properly hooked. So many
Never
things
mind.
can go wrong,
Get another one.
but our luck had to change soon. Richard had another big king at his bait later in the afternoon, and while it made several passes, it just would not eat the bait. Some days are like that, but other days can be red hot. On his best day, Richard has had 35 hookups on big kingfish. On our second day, we tried another spot, this time carrying our gear over a steep ridge with a spectacular climb down the other side to the water. These land-based guys really deserve the fish they catch, and Richard catches a lot of them. His biggest is 42.5 kilos or 93 pounds. That's a giant fish to catch from the rocks. The raft which Richard had carried over the ridge for us got us over to a small island. However, as we rigged up, the weather started to deteriorate rapidly. We were running out of time. But the kings were ready and waiting, and they were hungry. Graham hooked up on a whole pilchard almost straight away. The fish ran him out to a reef where it wrapped the line in the rocks, and another one lost. Then Richard hooked up and the same thing happened again. The wind was getting stronger. We were having trouble staying on our feet when I decided to try my old favorite, a whole piper hooked through the head.
Got him!
It worked again. And this time, I wasn't giving an inch.
We had a bit of fun hopping around the rocks, trying to stay level with the fish and keep a short line. But this one wasn't going to reach the bottom. The line would have to break first. I managed to keep him in close and off the rocks, and the bait runner rod and reel did the rest. We had our land-based kingfish at last. It wasn't a monster, but I was happy.
These are lures we use for deep jigging for kingies, Steve. Which ones do you like the best?
Well, it's a hard thing to say. The chrome, any of the chrome ones, the locally made Brinks, Lethal Lure or Grim Reapers, they all work well.
Yep.
They've just got enough action on them, and the S shape through them to make them work. They're nice and shiny, they sparkle.
And you can wind them really fast, which is the
And
key
you can
to
go real
jigging for kingies, isn't it? Fast retrieve.
Yep.
Tell us all about it again. That's another new one that we're working on. We've been working on this one for quite a while, and as you can see, we've tried to get the aerodynamic shape as efficiently as we can, so that it'll sink quickly, and you can either yo-yo it up and down, or bring it in a very fast retrieve.
Nice.
Right.
This lure is based on American jigs called irons, which were introduced to New Zealand by Americans coming to fish for kingfish at White Island.
California, which of course is where this sort of fishing really started. This is
The crocodile is another American lure which also works very well on kings when jigged in deep water.
Jigging up and down.
Some people like to take a small siloom or light stick and they thread it on the line using a tube to hold it in place above the lure. And when it's broken, it gives off a light which attracts fish in the deep water.
And break it.
There are two styles of deep jigging for kings, and the main thing is to give the jig as much action as you can. This excites the fish into striking. Adam shows us how he jigs the rod, winds the slack line in fast, then repeats the action. And when the lure is halfway to the surface, he winds it right up to the top quickly, and then drops it and repeats it all again. The important thing is to give the jig as much action as you can. Steve is demonstrating speed jigging, where the lure is dropped to the bottom, jigged up and down a couple of times to attract the attention of the fish, and then wound in as quickly as you can. Occasionally you sweep the rod up to vary the action. He's using a Speedmaster reel, which has a 6-to-1 ratio retrieve and is ideal for this type of fishing. You should use as light a jig as possible with just enough weight to reach the bottom, which of course will vary depending on the depth and the current. We normally use 15 kilo tackle when using jigs of 250 or 300 grams, going up to 24 kilo stand-up gear for real heavy jigs. A depth sounder is a must for finding reefs, pinnacles and ledges where the fish are found. This home video shows the action you can get on jigs when fishing over a reef. These anglers are fishing at the Three Kings Islands north of North Cape, one of the hottest fishing grounds in the country, and it was filmed by Chris Bailey of Auckland. The anglers are using 24 kilo stand-up tackle, and every time the boat drifts over the reef, they hook up on big kings from 30 to 60 pounds and sometimes bigger. As well as jigs, they're also using bait fish hooked through the nose with a ball sinker above the bait. The bait's lowered to the bottom, then raised about a metre to keep it out of the rocks, and when a fish takes, the fish is allowed to run for a short distance before striking. A fat terraki is just one of the many fish you will catch on jigs.
him up a bit. You might have two on, mate. It might be a double header. Last. Wrap it around your hands. Don't try and pull it through your hands. Yeah, that's it.
Got a foul hook, mate. That's why it's taking so long. Guys like this for a baby.
Closer.
Yeah. Well done, G.
Yeah, well done. Yeah, that's excellent. A half hooker, eh?
The last fish is a big old bucket mouth, a nice half hooker or sea bass of 43 kilos. That's nearly 100 pounds.
Was that on a lethal lure?
Yep.
Look your head off.
Oh, cheers, mate.
Can't look your head off, can you?
Here are some fishermen that really know how to catch kingfish. Trevor Barnett and his fishing mates are fishing out of Port Charles at Coromandel, and they've been fishing here for many years. They've got a few tricks. One of them is to use lead core trout lines to catch the kahawai for bait. And they keep the first one in a fish box full of water while they catch the second one. Then the baits are drifted over a reef. These guys don't bother with balloons, but they keep the kahawai on a short line under the boat. When a king is hooked, or sometimes two at once, they lead the big fish out to deep water to play them. They lose some in the rocks, but so far this season the biggest they've landed is 91 pounds. And on this day, they didn't do too badly either.
Is there any chance to get the harness on? Oh, Jesus.
Harness?
Is there any chance to get the harness?
Yeah, harness is on.
The harness is not on.
It is.
It's a big glory. That's the big one.
It'd be funny if we both around the same bloody fish, wouldn't it?
What are you doing, Laurie? You got the deep sea here. Nicely, Lawrence, nicely. Oh, he's got a mate with him, yeah.
Trevor?
Oh, this is a nice fish, Lawrence.
Put your rod down and gap him while he holds it.
Might let it go. Woohoo! It's a good fish. We'll just keep going around the circle.
I'm filming.
We're going the wrong way, Murray.
You ain't got any fish.
Yes, he has. It's there, but he'll lose the bloody thing. Around again, and you lose the third one, I'm taking you home. And you're walking.
I get on that bloody rural delivery and straight back. Not as big as the last one.
Oh,
Pull the faces, Laurie. Take your tongue out.
oh, rubbish. You mean the last two?
Third time lucky. Ooh.
Ooh, ooh. Get your ass, get him around the back. 10-4.
Oh.
Because we want to show you what to do.
Hey, we want to show you a good time.
Yeah. one of the day, boy. The biggest baby of the day. Another one. Oh, God. He hasn't even seen the boat. Oh, God, I think he might have seen the boat then. Oh, jeez, none of that further. Nicely. I think we've got him, Lawrence. Oh,
Fucking dog.
Don't pull it in till I have a look.
Oh, oh. You got the gaff, Lawrence, haven't you?
The gaff's right here, mate. Hold that line, Trevor. He's going to go.
Yeah. I've released it off. Loosed it off.
It's not going rounding it. Oh, it's a good one. That's a good one.
Any doubt, let him go again. I got trouble. Oh, ho, ho, ho. Ho, ho, ho. Oh, my lordy, lordy. There, boy. You want a lift, Larry?
I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it helps you catch more fish. This is the second in a new series of fishing videos we're producing, and in the next video we're going to look at surf casting and fishing from the shore. We've got some great ideas on baits and how to rig them, plus a new technique which will add a lot of distance to your casting. After that, we're going to do a video for kids on how they get started in fishing. But meanwhile, good luck and good fishing.